Hi, here I am again. The dogs are quiet and the bird hopefully won't yell. But I can't expect that's gonna not happen. Um, the miracles that JOeY has shown the family, and really, when you think about it, I expect miracles now because so many have happened. I don't even consider that they won't happen. They will. A lot of stuff has happened to me over the whole span, there goes a bird, of my existence in this place, and I'm kind of glad I was raised in the Catholic Church, except for the guilt and the blame and the shame, because there was a lot of, and Joseph Campbell mentioned this too, that he was really glad about it, because there was a mystery, at least in the old Catholic Church. There was the concept of a mystery, of something more, and it was something to be, a lot of symbology, a lot of, well, I'm glad, because I wasn't afraid to leave the concepts of that church, the blame, the shame, the guilt, the anger, the bullshit part. That's gone. I had to get rid of that. Take the journey of a Schkegel, and which I'm still doing, actually. That's still happening. But JOeY helped, had to get through to me in every way that was possible, and I was looking for ways so that I would know he was okay. That's all. I was his mom, and I wanted to know he was okay. That's the bottom line. How's my son? Well, as the years progressed, and I was still in the hole, but had found out that, he had come to my friend, he had come through George Anderson, he had even come through to me in writing. I started having a lot of anger, that, again, anger would come through a lot, and I knew I couldn't play the game of pretending like everything was the same. It wasn't. There was never going to be the same again. I was not in a comfort zone of, oh gee, everything's just fine. No, that's not ever gonna exist again. I knew that the Marianne that had existed before JOeY decided to go to the light had completely disappeared, and she was non-existent. And so I cut myself off from everyone, and still do, because I had to let it go. I wasn't going to watch JOeY get married and have children, and I had to let go that I had any control. And but I was still carrying a lot of guilt, that I had done something wrong. The ego is a very naughty, the egoic conditioning is naughty. And it's still in there. It's still in there. And no matter what, it's like getting rid of it takes a while. I found out, at least in linear time. So I was still carrying that crap that I had allowed myself to. And again, I take responsibility for writing this script of being raised in guilt and blame and shame and judgment, which I was pouring onto myself. So I remember one day standing in my living room, and I was furious with the higher power, or God, or whatever you want to call it. I was furious, and I kept calling it a motherfucker and an asshole, and I was screaming, where's my son? Who's my son now? Where is he? And I was so angry. I was so angry. And I was like demanding. And all of a sudden this voice that was just so strong came, and it said, find out who you are. Find out what you are. And then you'll know who your son is. Okay. That was a big one. Okay. So in other words, I gotta find out what this Marianne thing is. Now, I was at that time on forums online on what was www.nderf.com, which is the Near Death Experience Research Foundation. I wanted to find out from people who had had near death experiences at that time what their experience was, and I was poring over them. I was spending every day reading account after account after account after account after account of these people's experiences. And every one of them would talk about a love beyond measure, a love that couldn't even be described, a joy that was beyond understanding. They would provide details. They blew me away. Okay, and I needed to hear it. I was just, there goes the dogs. I was just filling myself with their experiences, filling myself, because I needed to know what he was experiencing now. If I just knew the joy, just a taste of it, I would find peace. And I felt that way. Because that is what you want for your child. Doesn't matter. You want your child to be happy. That's all. Doesn't matter what they do. Doesn't matter. Just want them to be happy. So I wrote to Anita Morjani back then, and she was on those forums back then. People were really, really astounded at her experience of having fourth stage cancer and coming out of it with no cancer. And if you've read her book, Dying to Be Me, which is now, she's really famous and everybody knows who she is. But back then, she was just on these forums, and I wrote to her and I said, I told her about JOeY, and she wrote back and said, your son is closer to you now than ever, when he was using his body. And I wanted to believe that. I just didn't know how, but it gave me such incredible, these people were so incredible, and they were so filled with joy and so unafraid. It was like they were unafraid of everything. And I thought, man, I've got to get to know these people, So I'd write to them constantly. I'd write to different people a lot of them who are on my Facebook page now, my friends. And I was on one forum with groups of women who have had their child cross, and I had to leave because I had reached a point where I couldn't say anymore that my son had died. I knew now that he hadn't. And they were still, some of them, in a place where they were grieving so horribly. And I said, I can't go there anymore. I know he's okay. I was still grieving his body, but that's the egoic conditioning that grieves the body, and I know that now. It's very selfish in a sense for me. I believe that why would I grieve his joy, but I had to find out he was in joy first. I wanted information. So here I am on these forums, and I'm reading everything I can get my hands on, and every book I can get my hands on, because they're talking about quantum physics and theoretical physics. I'm reading a Dr. Amit Goswami, and my higher self was throwing books at me. The Miracle of Death by Dr. Betty Kovacs. Her son and her husband had both made that journey and come and made visitations to her. I was getting, the universe was just throwing everything at me to let me, have some peace and help me on this place. And in the middle of all this, Bobby, my oldest son, calls me, and he says, and he was literally, almost shaking because of JOeY's had come to him, and in a very strong dream that was more real than real, he said. JOeY came to Bobby and described in full detail what had happened the night that he had made that journey. Now Bobby, I know, he was kind of angry at JOeY for all this. Bobby, I think, felt very protective of me and wanted to make sure that I was okay, and thinks that what JOeY did was just terrible, to be so dumb as to, call his friend up that night and So there was a little bit of anger in Bobby, and I understand that. You know, he was an older brother, and he wanted to protect his brother and his mom too. So JOeY really came to Bobby strongly. And Bobby is not the kind of guy that believes in all this crap that I read. You know, he's not the kind of guy that picks up a book about near-death experiences and reads quantum physics and stuff. And he's just not going to do that. He's not going to call George Anderson. Bobby's just a regular guy, but JOeY got through. JOeY punches the hole through whenever he gets through. And he told Bobby in detail that night he was sitting on his couch having a chat with his friend, and he had invited this other guy over. He drank the alcohol and had taken a few pills and fell asleep after the chat, and he explained to Bobby, I thought I was going to wake up on my couch, and wow, I woke up in this other place. I felt like I was in a tunnel, or I was in this train going really fast, or really fast. And suddenly I'm at this place where it's all really quiet and I'm not sure where I'm at. And then Dad was there. And he tells this to Bobby. And he had his hand out and he said, come on, son. And he said, man, he told Bobby, there was no way I was going back. This is great. This is a vacation I've always wanted. This is the best place ever. So he told Bobby in detail things that only I knew. JOeY had told me a while back when he was using his body that he didn't like that capsule he had in his abdomen and he wanted to take it out. And I said, no, are you crazy? The doctors put it in there to keep you from, you know, taking drugs and becoming addicted again. And he said, no, it's just under my skin and it itches and I'm going to take it out. And I said, no, that's stupid. Well, I never told anyone that JOeY had said that to me, ever. So when he did visit Bobby, he told Bobby, he said, I took the capsule out, or I tried to, and it didn't work, you know, and I had an infection. So, you know, JOeY is like, I'm going to do it myself kind of guy. I had an infection, and he said, yeah, he goes, but these things happen every day, Bobby, to everybody. Lots of people have these things happen. And I knew this was going to hurt the family. I knew this was going to be hard on them, but there was no way I wanted to come back to that place. There's no way. Now that I've been here, there's no way I wanted to come back. So he chose to stay. And he told Bobby in detail those things about that capsule and stuff that only I knew about, that he had wanted to take it out. And so, and then I asked Bobby, I said, well, what did he look like? You know, what did he look like? And he said, Mom, he looked like you. And Bobby said to me, Mom, JOeY looked like he was covered in pixie dust. So that jived with everything that I'd heard from the near-death experiencers, that there's this, you know, if you're going to show up to somebody, you show up in form that someone's used to. So Bobby needed to see, you know, our brains filter consciousness into form. JOeY showed up and allowed Bobby to see him as the JOeY that he knew, but it was like a really beautiful, translucent JOeY. And JOeY can, you know, be any form he wants, you know, and so can Bob, but because form is just matter condensed. It's not even matter, it's just light condensed into a slow-moving thing, and that's what this is. That's why I call myself a light wave on a quantum field of probability, because that's what I am. You know, just I am. Consciousness imagining itself to be this. You know, I am the essence of Mary Ann, you know. And JOeY came to Bobby and said, I knew the family would be upset, but there was no way I was coming back. And I understand that, you know. But for him to come to Bobby and be so strongly speaking of all of these things that I had been reading already from the near-death experiencers, and for Bobby to be explaining it in such a detail, I knew it was Joey, and I knew that he had gotten through to Bobby to help Bobby with his anger towards what Joey had done, and he was, hopefully that anger is dispelled quite a bit. He also came to Mike very strongly in a dream, and he took Mike to the McMurdo ice station. And Mike told me this, and Mike, again, is a regular guy. He's not one to buy into this crap I'm reading. Why should he? He's not one to contact a medium or talk to near-death experiencers. But Joey came to Mike and told him, he said, I took him to the McMurdo ice station, which is the most remote ice station in the world, okay? And he told Mike, he said, he took him to this deep, deep water, and he pointed to it, and he said, have no fear of death, Death is nothing to be feared. That's when the fun begins. And he said, and he pointed down to the water, and he said, dive in. It's not as deep as you think. And I thought, wow, it's like, death is when the fun begins. Death is when the fun begins. And tell